Welcome to the Intentional Leaders Podcast, the show for leaders who are ready to move beyond managing and start leading with emotional intelligence, confidence, and purpose. I'm your host, Cindy Wentland, and today I'm super excited to welcome Eric Thompson to our podcast episode. He is the founder of Lift Leadership, and he believes that pressure doesn't break teams, it actually reveals them. Ooh, so very interesting. Couple things you will take away from this podcast episode is that there are some practical tools to lead when you're under pressure. And he's going to give you a little bit of insight when your team is operating from a place of fear or stress and how to shift back into a strong performance mode. He's also going to talk about simple strategies for leadership growth, including a little bit of insight about his LIFT model. And his LIFT model is super awesome. It's about self-awareness, gratitude, self-compassion, things that keep us grounded in the face of burnout or when we're really being challenged to show up as our best self. I know you're going to love this interview. Let's go. All right. Well, today I'm super excited to welcome Eric Thompson to Intentional Leaders Podcast. Welcome, Eric.
Thanks, Cindy. I just wanted to first honor you for creating this space. Knowing the work that you do and the intention in which you do it is meaningful, and I'm just thankful to be able to show up and learn something, hopefully add a little bit of value along the way.
You absolutely will. And I've already learned from you. So I'm looking forward to learning more. And what we're going to talk about today, I think the timing of it is super cool because, of course, we just got through with the Olympics and got to see all these amazing athletes perform. And you know, they always talk about the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat and all of that. And the reason I mention it is because I think about athletics and even leaders being athletes in a way. They have to prepare to do their job, you know, make sure they're focused and healthy. So you began your career in baseball and coaching before you moved into corporate leadership. So I would love you to share a little bit about what that journey taught you about performance under pressure and even emotional regulation. What are some lessons learned?
Yeah, I'm so thankful. I think baseball chose me more than I chose baseball, and understanding when I was a kid, I remember my first practice because for years we lived in rural Arizona, like middle of nowhere, and I tried to play on a team and there wasn't enough players. So I was never able to play until we moved into Tucson, which is more of a established community and then had, you know, a larger population. I was able to be on my first baseball team in fourth grade. And I just remember there was a period in my life where my parents went through a divorce. There was just a lot of change, right, going on. And so you're trying to find out who you are, what life is like without two parents at home, all those things. And I remember my first practice being on the field and having a moment where my system, my mind, body, it was like, you know, if you believe in God, God whispered to me. If you believe in universal energy, there was just this space in this moment that said, you're going to be okay. This is where you belong. And so, and I can't explain it. I don't know that I've had those feelings or emotions many other times in my life, but I just remember it being very profound and something that captured my attention. I was emotionally attached to the game. It gave me a voice. It gave me a way to express myself. I was not a great student. I just couldn't focus, and I didn't love. I love humans and I love relationships. But getting down and being asked to do something that I'm not emotionally connected to is challenging, like for me, but for others. So I think that sent me on a way of just approaching the game of really having a sense of identity to the game and feeling safe in the game, and all the challenges outside of that world. Growing up in Southern Arizona during really high gang activity period of time, and being so close to right in the path of drugs running through the United States, right? And so strong ties to Los Angeles street gangs Tucson had, and I went to a school that was very diverse, had underserved student populations, had you know, a lot of families going through difficult times, right? All those things. And I just learned in that space, I just started to learn how to pay attention and read the room, right? Like I had this expression of this game that I could show up and be authentic, but I also had who's out there to hurt me, who's going to take advantage of me, who do I feel safe with? So at a very young age, because of divorce and because my
Oh,
both parents had to figure out their life, right?
yeah.
And in the era of latchkey kids, I was a latchkey kid.
Yes.
And so you just had to pick things up pretty quickly. And so I've always been paid a lot of attention to understanding data and dynamics, trying to read
Mm,
situations and circumstances. And if you think about baseball and athletics, it's a little bit of both, right? It's okay,
yeah.
there's a team dynamic that influences the performance of the team. And then there's individual responsibility and data pieces that you need to understand what's going on. And when you figure out how all those things work together, you can show up and add value to your team or your community, right? So on and so forth.
Yeah.
And then there's like this cycle that people go through of all these of energies, right? The human experience are four
Yeah.
energies. It's mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual or aspirational. And when you can align those things and show up authentically, really good things happen. So I figured that all that stuff out through the game of baseball. And then when I was done playing, I coached and I leveraged some of those same things and realized, okay, I think I can influence the collective group. I'm learning how to,
Hmm.
influence those around me and help them level up. And then when I went into the corporate space, I just did everything I learned as an athlete and it
Yeah.
translated really well. And I had a lot of success and momentum. So yeah, I always tell people everything I do now is tied back to what I learned as an athlete.
Yeah. Yeah. What a cool story, though, when you think about at a young age going through that much pain and chaos and confusion and uncertainty. And I think, there's a lot of different paths that kids could take at that point, as you said, especially when you're surrounded by a lot of, things where it could take you away
Yeah.
from positivity and the energy and connection. And
Yeah.
for you to be able to see like what those choices were and make those choices, what a great, life lesson at a very early age. And I think it's really, I think fascinating that you experienced it that way and that you realize like, hey, um, paid attention to it and how that felt at the
Yeah.
time.
No, I appreciate that. And I,
That's
I
cool.
oftentimes like, I think one of my strengths in the world that I live, right, whether you refer to me as an executive coach, an entrepreneur, a
Yeah.
business leader, a community leader, a family leader, whatever, in
Yeah.
those spaces, I think the way that I'm able to show up and authentically connect with others is because I've had to work through my own stuff, right? I
Yeah.
don't come from a place of judgment, like, because
Yeah.
I know I've seen
Yes.
struggle. I understand
Yeah.
struggle. But that's my strength is always on the other side of that struggle. And so when
Sure.
people, I think, connect with me and kind of the my perspective of the world, I think there's a humanity in that to be like,
Yeah.
okay, I trust this person. He's been through
Yeah.
some things and he's not judging me. He's really actually trying to show up and support me. And I think
Yeah.
that's something that's always worked really well. I think now, getting ready to dance with 50, being 50, I can I can sit there and say like I really like who I am and I
Yeah.
really I can find peace in that. And
Yeah.
so yes, I wouldn't be able to have the impact that I'm fortunate enough to have if it weren't without those struggles. And
Yeah.
obviously I think that you don't go and have the impact in your world as a executive coach, as a small business owner, as creating this space to amplify intentional leaders. You don't bet on yourself or choose you without seeing some things and
Yes.
powering through some things, right? So,
Yes.
and I think that's why people resonate with you as well, and that's
Mm.
why you are able to engage people in these conversations that add value to your community. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's all tied together.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I definitely share a lot of uh, the mistakes, the missteps, because, that's part of being human. And I think is getting through those difficult times and how we come out the other side, as you said, and what we learn from them. I think that does create a lot of strength and a lot of a foundation of that, I guess, confidence. And as you said, non-judgment in
Yeah.
working with others, right? It's all
Yeah.
okay and it's all going to
Right.
be okay, right? And
Yeah.
I love you're dancing with the 50s.
Yeah. 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 Right. Yeah.
I love
I,
that.
yeah.
It's a great thought.
Yeah. I
Um,
I do think on that though. I think to go back to the athletic. I'm fortunate. I played baseball though because
yeah,
baseball's a failure sport. Like
Yes.
you can be in the Hall of Fame failing 7 out of 10 times, right?
Yeah.
And so
Interesting.
I think that gave me permission real quick that, and again, you can do everything right in that game and still be out, right?
Yeah.
Like so
Yeah.
there's just those things that I'm less, I don't get too high, I don't get too low, and I think that
Yeah.
that kind of perspective or disposition has really helped me a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and let's talk a little bit about that because what that means is when you're able to stay in that zone, kind of that emotionally regulating yourself. It isn't too high, it isn't too low. And boy, if you could sell a pill for
Yeah,
doing that. Not that we want to over medicate, but
right.
a lot of people struggle with that. And when you think about, emotional energy and regulation, why do you think that's so critical as you work with leaders in the business space or entrepreneurs? Why do you think that is so important for leaders, especially as they're dealing with stress or burnout or change?
Yeah, there's a lot there, and
Yeah.
I'll apologize up front for the passion in which of it I'll share this information, but
Oh, please,
I
passion.
think
Never
yeah,
apologize for passion.
right, yeah. So I think a lot of times in team environments, and so when executives reach out to me or to you and they say, "Hey, we have this problem, or can you help?" It's usually tied to interpersonal relationships in some way, shape, or
Yes.
form. And then it's tied to, I wish that person was a little more polished or they had executive presence, right? There's very specific things in their mind they're trying to communicate to us.
Yeah.
And when I hear that, what I understand is there's something happening when the pressure's high
Hmm.
that is creating misunderstanding and frustration and pain within the organization, right? Executive presence is always like, man, they're great until, like, I love
Yeah.
them here, but as soon as this hits, they
Hmm.
fold. We
Yes.
in the world of baseball, we talk about batting practice All Americans. Like when
Mm.
you're taking batting practice and the hitters just spraying the ball all over the field, they're crushing it, they look amazing. You throw them in the game, and they couldn't hit water if they fell outside a boat, right? They just are, they the pressure just shrinks them. and
Yeah.
and I've and I for years in my background, not only as an executive coach, but the work I did in schools, I would show up. I found out I was not, I was really comfortable with going in really messy conversations. I was like,
Mm.
I, you know, for instance, in social and emotional learning, we built a curriculum called Civil Schools. It was implemented in, you know, hundreds of schools across the country in
Wow.
multiple countries. And
Yeah.
it was teaching culturally responsive teaching practices to educators. It was teaching keeping kids safe in the digital space to parents. And it was teaching
Mm.
student up center intervention training, right? So this is an
Yeah.
umbrella with the what we were trying to create is a culture of civility and respect, like bullying prevention, like
Hmm.
psychologically and emotionally safe environments, not only on campus but in the digital social space. And in that work, that was a proactive preventative initiative. Our phone would call after school shootings, hate crimes, rapes, suicides, the really terrible things that would happen in humanity that usually are tied to some aspect of a person's identity, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so when I found myself like, and I'm not professionally trained, I'm not clinical in any of that sense, like to be a crisis therapist or
Hmm.
to be a therapist or a counselor, but I worked really closely with them and I figured out how to organize and align initiatives to help people reclaim some sense of safety and
Yes.
activate healing. But what I learned through that, Cindy, was when people are calling and asking for support or guidance through that, they first of all just need to know that what they're experiencing is part of the lived experience, right? That they're
Hmm.
not broken, they're not, this is life in some way, shape, or
Yes.
form. There's some sort of shared humanity and connection, that what's bad for you is bad for me, and we're in this together, and let's move through this uncomfortable time and space to get to the other side, because we know there's a more there's more peace and more safety and comfort on the other side of this moment. But let's
Yeah.
learn through this movement. The only way through it is movement, right?
Yes.
Let's
Yes.
move through this moment and get through it together. So I think where leaders and folks think about how does pressure show up, how does there's all these misconnections and misunderstandings because what most leaders lack is self-awareness. That's one of the,
Mm-hmm.
they lack self-awareness and they lack other awareness. What
Yes.
happens is pressure tends to take, okay, I got a broad perspective and I'm open to possibility and I'm trying to learn in a growth mindset. And pressure usually shrinks people down to play small. And when they're playing small, they have more blind spots all over around them. And
Yeah.
then what happens is if I'm a leader and I have blind spots, then somebody on my team may feel neglected, right? Another
Mhm.
person on my team may be solving the wrong problem. Another person on my team may be completely disengaged and just kind of, quiet quitting. And
Yeah.
I'm not seeing that or recognizing that. And I'm trying to advance my initiative because this is so important to me. So we start moving, we start accelerating pace, which speeds up the game for everybody. And now there's more things missed, performance gets sloppy, and frustration and despair kind of grow, whether it's in a
Yeah.
team environment or a corporate environment. So where I found kind of like with my eclectic background in athletics, my eclectic background in activating healing in these, educational spaces, and my time as an executive leader, I would go into, okay, I'm going to solve it from top down. It's let me give me the best executives. I'm going to figure it out. But I would go work with them, and as soon as I'm gone, change wouldn't really, like, they would go
Yeah.
back to who they are, and you're like, well, that's not changing the environment.
Yeah.
And then I would go down and like try and advocate for frontline folks, and then it was like, okay, well, no, I need to hold them accountable, right? And this is good for them. Where I found the big gap was voice.
Mm.
Are you creating this space where people can feel seen, heard, and valued? But what does
Yeah.
that actually mean? That means I can show up authentically. I can advocate and communicate my thoughts, my beliefs, my perspectives without judgment.
Mhm.
But that's an inside out game. Like there's
Yeah.
some people that and you've worked with that have no problem
Yeah.
communicating their thoughts and advocating for themselves.
Yeah.
That's who they are.
Yeah.
And it's not those people you're too worried about. It's the people who haven't learned how to advocate for themselves or how to speak up because they're these really incredible humans. And a lot of times they're women, right? They're these incredible leaders that are shouldering and burdening so much and working so hard, but are not getting the visibility and the credibility they deserve. And people can't always name it, but they feel it. So they
Yeah.
feel this invisible force that's deteriorating trust and transparency and celebration, all the things we're in business for. And then there's like this invisible force that everybody doesn't navigate, but they don't even understand what it is. So the reason I zeroed in on pressure, and I learned this
Mhm.
through my time working with high performing athletes, is like there's a lot of people in the right moment are going to say the right thing because the mic's on or whatever. But when pressure hits, you learn about somebody very quickly. Like when
Yeah.
I play a game with somebody, like as an athlete, I knew the teammates I could trust, and I knew the teammates that were doing the work and could meet a moment of pressure, and
Yeah.
I knew the ones that couldn't.
Wow.
And so I know now, 30 years, 20 years later from playing the game, my teammates, our lives may have went this way, but
Yeah.
once we get back together, there's core beliefs we understand and know about each other that
Yeah.
even people in my life don't know, people in their life don't know because they didn't compete next to each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
So creating the environment and understanding how pressure shows up in business and then teaching people that's a central nervous system, like teaching you can
Yeah.
learn these skills, how to access your wisdom and your talents and your creative thinking and problem solving skills when pressure is high. We haven't done a good enough job doing that. And then
Yeah.
I can tie dysfunction, I can tie high performance, I can tie everything back to that moment. And so that's where I really, built an organization that focuses on organizational pattern under pressure.
Yeah, yeah. And because you've experienced that in so many aspects of your life in sports, right? And then you think about in academics in the school situation and in businesses, and you've seen the pattern repeated regardless of the setting that you're in and what that pressure point does to people. And as you said, it is biology, but because we lack self-awareness, we don't know that that's our central nervous system freaking out about it. I think people
Right.
don't know what to call that. They don't know how to label it. They don't know how to frame it. And so what do they do with it?
Right.
And I think it's a really fascinating way to help support people's journey.
Yeah, I
through,
appreciate that.
yeah,
Yeah,
through all that you've learned.
thank you.
Um, So you've created the LIFT program, LIFT framework, and this was something that was really fun for me to explore a little bit about the work you've done. But your LIFT program, if you could describe what it is, but I know you have some pillars
Yeah.
that represent what LIFT means and the things that you want to help people share. So tell us a little bit about how you created that and what do what is the framework and why is that so important?
Yeah, so there are five pillars. So really what lift is preparing, it's helping people be in relationship with self, right? And who they
Yeah.
are, understanding why they do what they do, what do they really value, how can they be intentional in the way that they show up personally and professionally. And then how can they work with personal and professional boundaries and alignment of this North
Yeah.
Star or these aspirations that they have. And I think when a lot of times, especially now in the digital space, right, we're all tethered to our cell phones or technology, which can be really
Yes.
great in some ways. It helps us connect with others more so than connecting with ourselves. If
Yeah.
anything, it's allowing more connection within our communities and building a business and all these really wonderful things that are in our social spaces. But really, it's stifling our ability to connect with who we are and why we exist, right? And I think that I truly believe, I mean, we're all made out of stardust, right? We're all the same stuff. When we look up at the stars and what's inside of us, the same stuff.
Yeah.
That's profound to me. And then you got to think about, okay, well, what's in a star? Well, it's just stored energy. What's in me? It's stored energy. It's just a mechanism
Yeah.
to exchange energy. So the human experience is whittled down to understanding this energy. And I think, yeah, I'm really not trying to get metaphysical. What I'm trying to get is more engineered mind. So
Yeah.
if we can understand the human experience through something we can actually measure, which is energy, physical energy is really easy for us to understand. I can eat,
Mhm.
I can move, I can sleep, I can do all those things, and I understand how to logically what physical energy is and how to measure it. Mental energy, for the most part, we understand focus and learning versus playing and kind of those type of things, and
Yeah.
rumination or reflection. We understand those things. um, Spiritual or aspirational we get because we feel connection to others, we feel
Yeah.
connection to purpose, like we understand that's a real energy, we understand that we're pulled towards something, right?
Yeah.
And that is very logical. The emotional energy is complicated. And
Yes.
so one of the biggest challenges for people to understand who they are and why they do what they do is having a language to understand what they're feeling. And
Yeah.
so we have to think of emotions is the language of the body, and thoughts are the language of the mind. And when
Yeah.
you just think about that for a second, okay, who's informing who? Is the
Yes.
body informing the mind, or is the mind informing the body? Do they
Yeah.
even know how to talk to each other?
Right. A lot of
And,
times no.
and they don't. And that's where lift lives, is okay,
Yeah.
the body communicates through feelings and expression of emotions, and the mind communicates through thoughts. So and here's what I find incredibly fascinating when I was building this program, because I had to, for years I'm teaching young people how to deliver emotional first aid, right? Like that's what
Mm,
I'm teaching young people, is how do you show
yeah.
up if you fall and scrape your knee, we know to clean it and put a band-aid on it. What
Yeah.
happens if there's a social situation where somebody fell and scraped their knee, right? Metaphorically,
Mm-hmm.
how they're embarrassed, they're hurt, they're neglected. How
Yes.
do I show up and clean them up and put a band-aid on them?
Yeah.
So and when we don't do that, we deteriorate safety. We send a message to our community that you don't matter. So
Yeah.
that was doing that for a long time. I started looking around, okay, how does that show up in athletics? How does that show up in the corporate space? And it's the same energy. So what I've had to do is teach people now, to really teach people to understand what emotions are of other people. I start within. And here's
Mm-hmm.
this research that I find fascinating. All emotions are messages from a younger self to a future self that our present self doesn't often understand.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about that, a younger self, we get that. When we're younger, something happened, that energy stored, and now it's an emotion or it's a part of me. Cool. That makes sense to most of us, right? The future self are our values and
Mm.
our sense of purpose. That's our
Yeah.
future self.
Yeah.
So that's our North Star. So this message is coming from here, trying to yell to this, but my present self needs to interpret it and send the message there.
Yeah. It's a nice
That
way to think about
misunderstanding here is where a lot of pain, frustration, and despair
it.
live.
Yeah.
Because we start paying attention to now outward forces and pressure to please, to impress, to want connection to, and we stifle the voice coming within, which only when I neglect these younger voices or these younger messages, they only grow and get more pissed off at us, right? So that energy builds within us. And then at some point, they show up and they kind of like overreact in a lot of different ways. They can ruin a career. They can ruin a marriage. They can ruin relationships with children. They can ruin business deals, right? Because we don't know how to, we don't understand what they're trying to communicate. They may be saying that person over there is bad because they look like so-and-so. Well, great. They were 8. They're the mindset of an 8-year-old. They don't know this person, but it's a red flag and I need to be curious and open to it. So present Eric needs to say, yeah, there's something there with that person, but let me explore it. I trust you. I'm going to go work because this person, if this goes well, we can get closer to our shared goals, which is X, Y, and Z, right?
Yeah.
So I think that process of self-knowledge is where most self-awareness goes wrong, because we don't even understand what emotions and what they do in our life. And they don't know, is the mind driving right now, or is it the body, or is it this frustrated energy that's got the steering wheel versus higher self, right? Or the best version of ourselves.
Yeah.
I think that is where I've spent a lot of time over the past 5 years getting really fascinated with and having enough conversation with athletes and executive leaders and learning this myself. I'm convinced that this framework is the key to helping people be in relationship with self. And when they can be in relationship with self and extend themselves compassion, it puts them in a better position to be in relationship with others and extend others self-compassion. And when we can do that, we can really remove a lot of the barriers for misunderstanding and misconnections. And then we can advocate for ourselves. We can, bet on ourselves. All those things that we've learned as we move through life. I'm just trying to advance those lessons more quickly because technology is advancing a lot of lessons more quickly to emerging leaders, right? So this is kind of a unique space that I've found myself in, but I'm loving it. There's incredible results and impact and momentum. And so, I get really excited talking about it.
Yeah, as well you should. And I think you're getting at certain things, and that's why I think I love talking to you and meeting you initially, is because I think we're aligned in that disconnect of self-awareness to people and recognizing that when it doesn't exist, how painful it is, regardless of where you are in your life or what you're doing, sports, academics, the real world or business, whatever it is. And I truly believe that is at the heart of so much frustration, stress, angst, all the things. My question is, as you were describing kind of the current, or the past emotional history and the things that you store, and then where we exist today, and then the North Star of where we want to be. I'm curious from your perspective, that North Star, how clear do you think that is for leaders that you've worked with? Like, is there a North Star, or did they just feel the discontent and disconnect of history and current? Or are they able to see the North Star? I'm just curious.
So it depends. So visionary leaders are really great at seeing things that don't exist, right? And being emotionally attached to it. But visionary leaders aren't always well-intended. And it's because they don't know themselves. They don't know where that energy is coming from, right? So you get a lot of charismatic leaders. This is one of the most researched topics of introvert versus extrovert. What's a better leader? All that kind of stuff. Core values most people don't know their core values. They just don't. They haven't spent time to realize what they value and who they are. And emotions get stronger around the values you suppress. So like you have, if you're, let's say you have a really strong value around justice, and we're living in a time of ICE, right? And let's just say that you're struggling, that the emotions around that are going to be really, really high. but it's what's important to understand is what's the value? Why am I getting so frustrated with ICE and this policy and all that kind of
Yes.
stuff?
Yeah.
If I can tie it to my value, then I can act in alignment of my values. If I don't know I have a really strong justice value,
Yeah.
and it just, that information can come in and change our system, and now we're living in this heightened stressful state, and I can't disconnect
Yes.
from the news and the challenge and all those things. So values and leaders, back to leaders, a lot of leaders are running away from something. They're not running towards something. And this is always my metric for who am I going to try and partner with. And I'm not batting a thousand. I've made mistakes and I've learned. Leaders who are running away from something haven't found peace within, right?
Mm.
They need,
Yeah.
they're going to use people, they're going to use money, they're going to do whatever they're going to use to satiate what they haven't figured out who they are and why they're on this
Yeah.
earth. There's
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
amount of success that's going to validate and feel loneliness and despair and all these emotions that we all need to deal with, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But when you can get a well-aligned leader that's clear on their values and they can articulate who they are as a human, and they have behaviors that match that, and then they're trying to paint people into their vision and their
Yeah.
values,
Yeah.
those leaders know how to create an environment for people to show up authentically within themselves and then contribute to the mission. The
Yeah.
leaders that are running away from something are very intentionally trying to sell a dream, manipulate people into that dream, right?
Mm.
And then always tying back to what's in it for me, not what's in it for you. And
Yeah.
what we should all know is that biologically we want to be in community, but we want our contributions to matter. So ultimately it's what's in it for me. I got to think every conversation right here is, it's not what's in it for me, it's what's in it for you. How can I, get
Mhm.
what you want, right? And help
Yeah.
you attach with that. And if I approach a relationship from that, knowing that you want to be loved and you want your life to matter, and then if what you want out of a relationship and what I want out of a relationship intersect, that intersection of influence, then really good things can happen. But if you
Yeah.
find yourself in relationships with leaders who are always like, well, this is what I need, and this is why it should be important to you, and they haven't taken the time to understand what's important to you, they're probably running from something, not running towards something.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really interesting way to think about it. I mentioned to you before we started recording that I've been with four groups this week, but three of these four groups I've done values assessments with, in the spirit of trying to anchor them in self-awareness. And most people say I want to lead by example, and I'm like, okay, what example are you setting? But if you don't know your values and you don't know where you're leading from, but also as you said, the dark side of the values are the things that tend to irritate us in life and the things that can tend to trigger us and take us off course that we get mad about, but we don't realize that it's the dark side of our values that are being
Yeah.
compromised. And I
Yeah.
think you're making a really important connection that causes people a lot of anxiety, frustration, anger when they don't even realize that that is what is occurring. Much less, as you said, how do I align and understand your values and the direction you're going, that I can connect and have that shared experience with you. I
Yeah.
don't have to dishonor my values by honoring yours. We
Right.
could coexist,
For
right?
sure.
And
Yeah.
go in a great direction together and partner around that. And I think a lot of people don't understand that.
I love it. Well, I mean, you have a background with DISC. You have I think
Mhm.
another performance index you use, right? You have
Yeah,
tools
yeah,
in your
yeah,
belt.
yeah,
All those tools are helping to give somebody a language, right? And when we
yeah,
have a
yeah,
language, then we can influence our beliefs. And when we can
yeah,
influence people's beliefs, we can influence their behaviors. And then
yes,
behaviors become contagious, and that's what we'd call culture, right? But
yes,
I think
yes.
what you're doing so well when you're and let me ask you on that, when you're doing the values assessment or walking them through, are,
Hmm.
are you're I'm guessing you're giving them a bunch of different values to kind of choose from, and then they
Yes.
identify the language that, okay.
Yeah.
And so I do something very similar in Lyft, right? And I do it through social scenarios and try and help them
Hmm.
identify what's coming up so they associate the
Yes.
energy behind it.
Yes.
But I'm curious, when you do that in with these leaders, from a value perspective, what how when somebody's on the flip side of understanding their values and having their language, how critical do you think it is in your work?
I think it's hugely critical in my work because I think self-awareness is something that I tend to lead with regardless of what I'm facilitating or training or teaching
Yeah.
or coaching, right? You mentioned that there's that gap in self-awareness, and I see it, I've experienced it, I understand it, I've researched it. So when I look at something like values, to me, it creates a lens in which we see the world that we may not understand, and then I think it brings to the surface the standards, the beliefs, and for all the people who say I want to lead by example and don't know what example they're setting, values gives a language to that, a framework, and then I can work with them on emotional regulation around triggers and around the dark side of values is what
Yeah.
bothers you at work, what tends to create that irritation or anger or annoyance with people that you work with that you need to partner with and collaborate with. So how do you honor someone else's values and your own, and understand the connection between those two things? So that's how I
Yeah.
try to work with people
I
around
love
it.
it.
And I try to weave it into so many different, it doesn't matter. I mean, the topic, I try to weave that in because I just think it's so important. And a lot of
Yeah.
people haven't done that or taken the time.
I think that's the awareness that I appreciate you saying. Two things, right? For you and your program and the work that you do in mine, and I think we've experienced some things and have had some success in this space, right?
Yeah.
The values are a foundation. Like really for me,
Yeah.
the values truly are the North Star. Like when I
Yeah.
understand somebody's values, like I can understand them on a human level much better because I can put scenarios through those values and be like, oh, that's why they're getting frustrated. Okay, cool, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I think so the five pillars of lift is
Yes.
self-awareness, self-compassion, because when we raise awareness, we tend to our inner critic tends to strengthen. So we got to be in
Yes.
relationship with our inner critic for change. So
Yes.
self-compassion. Then it's gratitude, then it's self-care, and then it's power base. I always say this, the first two pillars is looking kind of backwards in your life.
Hmm.
Gratitude is grounding you in what's right in front of you, right?
Yeah.
It's way of being present. And then self-care and power base are kind of looking forward in your life. But all
Sure.
self-care is, it's basically walking them through, teaching them who they are based on their values. So they
Yeah.
identify their values. And then they learn boundaries, personal and professional
Mm.
boundaries tied to their values.
Hmm.
Because I don't, beliefs, we can, and opinions, we can argue in perspectives all day long. I'm not going to compromise my values, and I would never ask you to compromise your values.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if we can have conversation around values, we can work around a lot of difference. And I think
Sure.
that's why the values are tied to everything that we do. And
Yeah.
even from organizational direction, you can say the same thing. Your mission, vision, values, that's your North Star, right?
Yeah.
But your values are going to be when your mission is off site or your visions kind of doesn't align. I can redirect the mission and the vision based on the values,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Yeah, you bet. Well, and I love that you're connecting that. I mean, when you talk about self-care and boundaries and the connections to your values and how you're showing up in the world, I think again, I think that's something that we don't get taught at an early age or ever, like around understanding your values, and as you said, we don't tend to be want to compromise them, and we shouldn't have to, but I think sometimes people feel like, well, I have to keep this job, or I have to work with this person, or I have to do this, I have to do this. Even if I value, you know, a balance in my life of family and work, it's like, oh, but I still have to do this thing for work, or,
Yeah,
you know, and I think there's a lot of compromising around boundaries. And then we're not caring for ourselves and our needs and those. And that's what I think is so powerful. You know, each of the piece of lift to me, when I heard it, I was like, each of them just resonates so powerfully because I see the dark side of people not having that for
right.
themselves.
Yeah,
And that self-care is huge,
yeah,
right? Compromise who we are and the things we care most about. But I think people do that on a regular basis and don't even realize they're doing it.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you connecting with that. I think of, specifically women and leaders. There was a great clip from Billie Jean King, and Billie Jean King is such a
Mm,
force within the
yes.
world of equity and sports and athletics. And she starts off saying, girls are raised to be perfect, boys are raised to be brave. And if we just
Mm,
dissect that for a second,
yeah.
you're talking about the social and cultural forces that, like, I'm like, if I live up to what society expects, I'm supposed to bet on myself. I'm supposed to take
Yeah.
chances. I'm
Yeah.
supposed to work through difficulty, right?
Yeah.
But women are challenged to be perfect and please everyone. And that shows up in a lot of different ways, specifically the self-care conversation, because,
Yeah.
how do I advocate for myself, or how do I say I need to step back and invest in myself because I'm giving too much to others? That's completely contradictory to what the norm that they've grown up in, right?
Sure.
Now, again, everybody has their own journey, and everybody has to, navigate these invisible forces authentically. But I think when I get excited about Lyft, and this is whether I'm working with 77-year-old executives or 14-year-old students,
Yeah.
is that helping them realize that, listen, there's going to be resistance along your way. Like,
Yeah.
you get to choose the amount of resistance you want. If your
Yeah.
goals are higher, expect more resistance.
Sure.
If you want an easy life, that's going to be hard, but you're making that choice. If you want a hard life, you got to make the easy decisions, right? Like, you got to you got to be consistent, and you got to be patient, and you got to advocate for yourself, and you got to walk away from opportunities, and you got to push back, and you got to protect your well-being, which is always, when you think about impact, because there's trajectory of all our careers, there is and you had a guest recently that shared something similar around fear, and we know how much fear shows up.
Yeah.
But the idea that there's a very clear path when you look at people experience success, when it really kind of that jump up, if we're looking on a graph, is when they stop being ruled by fear.
Yeah.
When they say, I'm letting go of it. Forget.
Yes.
I'm doing this for me. I'm not doing this for anybody else. And that's been studied time and time again. So I think us having different conversations around this, because you're going to say it to somebody and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, that's exactly the way I need to hear it.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it to somebody and they may not get it. They may need to hear it from you versus me.
Yeah.
There's different journeys for people to discover it. And I think that's what's so beautiful about how we're showing up and trying to create opportunities or pathways for people to connect with their true self, right? Or be intentional as a leader.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's really cool that you just said too, it could be someone at 14 who hasn't learned that yet, and you get to affect people at that young age who, like, I didn't learn this till I was dancing with my 50s.
Right.
As you said, I started letting go in my late 50s.
Yeah.
I was like, why am I so afraid of taking risks and going on my own as an entrepreneur? Like, why am I so afraid of that? And when you get people at a young age and you can help them see that journey and it resonates with them, or as you said, still someone who's 77 or they're in their 70s and they still want to take that journey and to change their trajectory, how do you help them to do that? And I just think it's so really just so fun that you get to work with all those different kinds of people and different
it keeps me relevant in a lot of different rooms, which is cool, because they're all teaching me something, right? Everybody, we have a different lived experience. But I think back to your point of when you bet on yourself, right? That the fear or anxiety or the comfort you were choosing to get to the point of like, okay, I'm making the jump. When you made the jump, I don't even ask you. I know it wasn't easy. I know it wasn't a clean, like, okay, I know how to fly, right?
No.
But here you just talked about how packed this week has been for you. And I know how hard it is to get those type of clients and to get that type of momentum in your business. But when you do, and all the like storylines we told ourselves from our younger self, because those are just messages from our younger self telling you, Cindy, what do you think? You're not good enough. You think you can go do that? 100%. You don't have a PhD behind your name, and you're not, Brene Brown, or pick a thing, right? Like all those things, right? And so, but when you move past all that and really step into that energy and amplify your voice with confidence, like grit, like truly developed confidence, not fake it till you make it, but no, just opening yourself up to sharing who you are. Those moments sends messages throughout your whole body that your body, it remembers, right? And then you see another level up. You feel that resistance, and then you're like, okay, this is the next level. And last, when we talked in preparation for this, you were at a very peaceful, prosperous place in your life. Like, you get to select who you get to work with. You get to amplify the stories you choose. You get to, go take a walk after this and then take a nap. You
Yep.
get to do all those things that you would not have been available to you if
Right.
you didn't bet on yourself, right? And
Yeah.
so how do we that's a everybody's journeys on their own. I'm helping lift people. I'm trying to shorten that time
Yes.
slot in a world where they're emotionally dysregulated, right?
Yes.
Like
For
we are
sure.
becoming more dysregulated than regulated. So
Yeah.
I love that you're resonating with it, and that's usually the feedback I get is
Yeah.
because it's kind of like you're in the middle of the desert, people are thirsty and there's no water, and then I show up with some water. Is kind of,
Yes.
and when people get into the course and they get into this work, all I'm doing is holding the mirror up back to them and
Yeah.
reconnecting them with self, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's what I get really excited about, because I need the same work as, I'm still a work in progress. And I know when I
Yeah.
go back to these principles and these frameworks that I feel my system kind of like, okay, decompress. I can exhale. I can slow things
Yes.
down a little bit. And then that's where I can capture my wins, learn from my losses, be intentional and show up and do my best work.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is wonderful. Which is why I think when I first talked to you, I was like, it feels good. The energy feels good. You have peace with yourself, what you're doing and how you've been able to take all those lessons learned, package it. And you said, all I'm doing, but all you're doing is important work because all you're doing is all your life experiences
Yeah.
that you're putting in a framework to help people do what has taken you, both through experience, lived experience, but also through a lot of research, science,
Yeah.
education, practical experience of things that you've seen that have
Yeah.
worked.
Thank you.
And
Well,
I
I
just think
love your
it's
energy
brilliant.
too. That's what I
I,
heard. I love your energy as well. I'm
it's,
thankful
it's
for the
brilliant.
proximity we have to each other for sure.
I know, it's brilliant. All right, so last question. I know
Yep.
we're getting close to time here, but
Cool.
most leaders, I hear a lot from leaders about confidence, and they tend to think of performance problems and confidence problems. But you talk about something different with pressure, and that they lose access to their ability. And
Yeah.
can you explain what you call, and you've kind of referenced it and teed it up for
Yeah.
right now, but what do you consider access mode versus protection mode, and
Yeah.
how leaders can recognize that language?
Yeah, this took me a while. Again, when you build something like Lyft, you're like, okay, what is it? How do I sell it? Who's it served
Yeah,
for? Like, and what I've learned over the past 2 years of integrating it into corporate spaces,
yeah,
into small startups, into dynamic athletic teams, right? I've learned that we don't lose our confidence. Confidence, in the course, I explained the difference between self-esteem and confidence.
mm,
Self-esteem is an outside force.
yeah,
Self-esteem is the approval of others, the approval of parents, trying to make you feel good. We talk about the participation trophies that kind of there's a
mm,
generation that went through.
yeah,
And in principle, it was a good idea, right? To
yeah,
make sure everybody gets a trophy and everybody they participate. We appreciate it. Just do your best out there. What we lost was pressure really does separate humans. Like
yeah,
you
yeah,
think of Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, these really
yes,
incredible leaders. They
yes,
had to navigate so much pressure and
yes,
have a healthy relationship with it. The pressure actually it leveled them up. They figured, okay, that's a
yes,
barrier. How am I going to, get over this next level of pressure?
yes, yes,
and
yes,
and that's something that's always been unique about youth sports and athletics is like the longer you play, the pressure, it doesn't necessarily grow. It's your relationship with that pressure. So whether
yes,
I'm
yes,
with Texas and playing
yeah,
in the national championship game, there's pressure there. Absolutely, there's pressure.
yeah,
But each player gets to choose how the relationship with that pressure.
yeah,
If I'm going to be defined and this pressure is the biggest moment ever, I'm going to lose access to my confidence, which confidence is forged through repetition and experience.
mm,
Self-esteem is basically validation from outside in. And so where we had a bunch of kids that got awards and participation, they thought they had confidence, and then pressure
yes,
hits and
yes,
they have
yes, yes,
none. They just haven't developed confidence, right? They were good
yeah,
at self-esteem, and their decisions were looking for validation from others, right?
mm,
Where athletics or somebody mastering, an instrument or something like that, they have the calluses, they have the bruises, they've
yeah,
been in the arena, right? and
yes,
and forged their way through it. You can't cheat them from that. They earned that. That's earned confidence. So where these really incredible performers, lose access is when pressure comes on. If they can't be in a healthy relationship with pressure and stress, they're not going to be able to access their confidence. So I always think of the flow-like state or access or having confidence is there's an on-ramp, and Daniel Goleman did really incredible research around this in his book Focus. When we're talking about the flow-like state, there's an on-ramp to flow and there's an on-ramp, off-ramp to flow. So think of it as a freeway. Okay. I got to get my vehicle up to speed and get up to, and I don't know what those behaviors are, but I got to figure out the behaviors. And then when I hit the interstate, I'm in the flow-like state. I'm not slowing people down. I'm not flying by people. It's a natural, focused dance between my mind and a relaxation of the body, right? That's what the flow-like state is. Working in tandem, being in relationship with each other, right? Sure. Making sure that the communication from the body, the feelings, are influencing and alignment the focus of the mind, the language, the thoughts, right? Okay. So that's the flow-like state. So an on-ramp is the access point. And what happens is I have the flow-like state. I just don't know how to get onto the freeway. And if I'm playing small or playing in fear, I'm in protection mode. I will never hit the flow-like state. Sometimes we can do it like runner's high. We talk about that. If I'm a runner, I do not want to go run. I don't want this feeling. And all of a sudden I start running. My mind's telling me you're an idiot. You hurt. Look at, feel your knee. Why are you doing this? Right. All that for the first, mile. Yeah. And then all of a sudden the body takes over and it's like you start getting that flow. The thoughts change. The feelings change. Now there's locked in. And now you hit that like runner's high and the endorphins release. And now like time slows down or evaporates, right? Yeah. You're just kind of in the present moment. That is an intentional act that incredible athletes know how to get to. They know they're on ramp, whether it's breath work, whether it's visualization, prayer, music, movement, stretching. They know the routine. Like incredible athletes know that routine. Executive leaders don't even know what the flow-like state is because they're always in protection mode. One meeting after the next. They know they've looked at their day in the morning and like, oh shit, I got that meeting. Right. I don't want to have that meeting.
It's gonna suck.
I got that, right? So they're just like they're in protection mode all day long. Of course. How am I gonna be? What is my on-ramp to when the pressure's on and the moment matters the most? Like your day, you had this conversation, which is fun, easy for you to show up and emotionally connect with, but you also had a presentation earlier today. And you know there's going to be 150 people in the room or whatever the case is, and you got to get them, focused in this space. The energy and the on-ramp to get that audience in this space to be open and learn, you have that skill because you're a professional facilitator. You know that on-ramp for collective flow, right? To be able to influence and inspire the room. A lot of leaders don't even recognize that they have to set up the room or they have to change the energy of the room. They have to get the on-ramp for people around them to go from protection mode, which is fear, insecurity, frustration, anger, sadness, right? Or just existing or living in the future, to access mode. Hey, let's slow this room down. Let's really connect with our values. What matters most? Why are we here? It's so much more enjoyable when we show up for one another, right? And create that intentional leadership that you're so passionate about. How do you create that space? Now, if my team is in access mode, I've given them permission to go share their confidence, their voice, their authentic expression in this room. And if I've done that for somebody, I've given them a gift very few people have ever given them. Because if I can create the space like you create here, for somebody to fully show up authentically, I'm on the other side of this a lot of times, right? Yeah. So this is a gift. You're curious, you're engaged, you're inquisitive, you're enthusiastic, you're reflecting really kind, thoughtful energy right back to me, right? This whole experience is a workshop in and of itself of saying, how do I show up in a room and create this environment where people can be themselves, they can access their confidence, their talents, their brilliance, and then bet on themselves in a way that enhances our community. Yeah. That to me is where most leaders, they're just in survival mode or protection mode and running all day long, and they miss these moments. And if you're not intentional about those moments, then when pressure gets really big, they do one or three things. They go to control, like just try and control more. So it's micromanagement. they go to avoidance, they step back and be like, well, I want that problem to go away, and they don't do anything, or they resist it, right?
Yeah.
And if they resist it, then it's just more friction in the system. And so
Yeah.
this is why I'm so like excited about this conversation around pressure, because it reveals so much about the organization. If you have a
Yes.
leader that avoids things, well, that's, believe me, that's contagious, and that's a problem.
Yes.
If you got a leader that's trying to control things, great, you got a bottleneck. You're never going to be
Yep.
able to scale. If you got somebody who tries to resist things, and somebody that's, being, subversive, then
Yes.
you know that there's going to be a disconnect, and now it's about opinions and discourse, not resolution.
Yeah.
So that's why I get excited about pressure and how it shows up, but
Yeah.
it will go back to it's that thing we talked about, playing with each other, right? As an
Yeah.
athlete,
Yeah.
I know Socrates said this: you learn more in 5 minutes of play than a lifetime of conversation. And
Oh.
so in that, about
Yeah.
somebody else, right? If you're playing
Yes.
with them
Yes.
versus having a conversation. But that's what work is. Pressure is, that's what play is. It's like when the
Yeah.
pressure's on,
Yes.
now I'm going to find out who you really are. Are you
Yeah.
somebody who's going to bring other people in and give them and transition them from protection mode to access mode, or are you going to come in and trigger everybody into protection mode, right?
Yeah.
And those are very subtle skills that are trainable.
Yeah. And I feel like you've uncovered the secret ingredients to, just better human beings all around,
Um,
right? Because
yeah.
it's true. All of the things that you're saying about our biology, our wiring, our how we show up in those critical moments and what that means and what it represents and what choices do we really have when we feel like we don't have any. It's like all the secret ingredients to life, and to have a happier, more satisfying life, and human being, all or a leader,
Yeah.
in an organization. And so and I know I keep thanking you for the work you're
Yeah.
doing, but I really appreciate the time that you've taken
Yeah.
with me to share what you've been doing and talking about the Lift program, because I like I said, I think you've got a lot in there that I believe in passionately as well. I've seen those disconnects, and I know you have too. And the way that you put it together and make it understandable, and your energy around it, and I know you apply it, and you've helped people apply it, and they've been successful, and you've changed people's lives, and that's just
Thank
a
you.
wonderful thing.
Yeah. I
So I
appreciate
just
that. Yeah.
honor all that you're
Yeah,
doing,
it means
Eric.
a lot. And I think I didn't necessarily know where we were going when I started this, but in building out Lyft. But what it is
Yeah.
really, I think what you're saying is this: emotions influence every aspect of people's life. So
Yes.
the best, like, I think, analogy I've been able to figure out what Lyft really is, there's layers to it, but it's giving people the emotional operating system required for today's high demand world we live in, right?
Yeah.
So as our phone gets updates,
Yes.
software updates, I think this is the update humanity needs.
Yeah.
How do
Agreed.
emotions show up in our life? How do we organize and align them in a way that's productive and builds community and leads people through very difficult, challenging times? And we can tie everything right back to this. But again, the space you've created, not only these conversations, but to bring thought leaders in that can really amplify the good, because there's a reason people follow you, and it's contagious through the screen. I haven't met you in person. I hope that happens here in the near future.
Yes,
But
that'd be
you
fun.
have an infectious, contagious energy about you, and I appreciate you sharing that with me very much. So,
Oh, well, thank you for your time today. It's been an
yeah,
honor, truly.
absolutely.
And I'm gonna put in the show notes, of course, a link to your website, to your program,
Great.
and I really encourage audience to go out and check it out, because I think you bring a lot of credibility, bring a lot of lived experience and a variety of lived experience into what you're teaching people to do, and it just highlights that this is for anyone to access. Anyone who's struggling in a variety of settings that you've mentioned could benefit from the work that you've done and
For
the
sure.
program that you've put together. So thank you for
Thanks, Cindy.
that.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. When you think about the upcoming week, pay attention to your state, before your strategy. This week, when you feel pressure rising, pause and ask yourself, am I in access mode or protection mode? One small step to breathe and reset or reframe can shift us back into becoming our best self. There are all kinds of tools on our website for you to also look to and learn from in terms of managing emotional pressure. So check out www.intentionalleaders.com for more tools and resources in our resource tab.